Imagine waking up one day and realizing you've completely disappeared. You were a mother who gave everything, a wife who said yes until there was nothing left, a woman with dreams until you became invisible. This is my true story. Years of quiet sacrifice, swallowed words, else together. But I found her again. If you've ever felt like the glue that's cracking, if you've given until you're empty, this raw, real journey is for you. Watch until the end, because sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is choose herself. Hit play. You're not alone. I was 22 this summer. I said yes. Not just yes to a ring, but yes to forever. Yes to moving into his parents' old guest room until we could afford our own place. Yes to changing my last name because it's tradition. Yes to every little compromise that felt romantic at the time. His name was Mark. Still is, I guess. Back then, he had that easy smile that made people lean in, the kind that said everything was going to be okay without him ever having to promise it out loud. I believed him. I grew up in a small town outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Not poor exactly, but the kind of place where dreams had to be practical or they got laughed at over Sunday potluck. My mom worked double shifts at the hospital gift shop. My dad fixed cars until his hands looked like cracked leather. They loved each other in the quiet, tired way people do when life doesn't leave much room for anything else. I watched them and told myself I wanted more. Not money, just more room to breathe, more space to become someone. I had plans. I wanted to open a little boutique downtown. Nothing fancy, just vintage dresses, handmade jewelry, maybe some of my own sketches turned into greeting cards. I'd already saved $3,000 from waitressing at the diner on Main Street. I had a Pinterest board full of mood pictures, exposed brick walls, fairy lights, a tiny reading nook in the corner where customers could sit with coffee and flip through poetry books I'd stock just because I loved them. I dreamed of traveling too, Italy first, then maybe Greece. I wanted to stand on cliffs overlooking the sea and feel small in the best way. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I kept a notebook of half-finished poems. Nothing publishable, just lines that spilled out when the house was quiet and the world felt too big. Mark came into my life like a warm front after a long winter. We met at a friend's backyard barbecue. He was wearing a faded UNC Tar Heels cap and telling a story about getting lost on a road trip to Asheville. Everyone laughed. I laughed hardest. Later, when the fireflies came out and the music turned slow, he asked me to dance on the grass. No one had ever asked me to dance before. Not like that. Not like I was the only person in the yard worth noticing. 6 months later, he proposed on the pier at Wrightsville Beach. The sun was setting, turning the water the color of rose gold. He got down on one knee with a simple gold band. No diamond, because we'll get one when things are more stable. I cried. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Everyone clapped. My mom hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat against mine. She whispered, "You're going to be so happy, baby." I believed her. The wedding was small, 50 people in my parents' backyard. White folding chairs, string lights, my aunt's famous lemon cake. I wore a simple lace dress I found on clearance at David's Bridal. I felt beautiful. I felt chosen. The first few months were sweet in that blurry honeymoon way. We rented a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The smell of dryer sheets drifted up through the floorboards every evening. We laughed about it. We stayed up late watching reruns of The Office, eating cereals straight from the box, talking about the future like it was a map we could redraw anytime we wanted. I kept working at the diner. I still sketched during slow shifts, quick pencil drawings of customers, coffee cups, the way light hit the chrome stools. I told Mark about the boutique idea one night while we were lying in bed, the ceiling fan clicking above us. "That's cute," he said, kissing my forehead. "Maybe after we have kids, you'd be amazing at it." I smiled. I didn't correct him. I told myself there was time. Then came the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. I stared at it for so long my eyes burned. Mark was thrilled, hugging me, calling his mom, already talking about names. I was thrilled too. terrified and thrilled. I quit the diner at 12 weeks because morning sickness made me dizzy behind the counter. Mark said, "Don't worry, babe, I've got us." I believed him. The baby came, a girl, loud and perfect, with his dark hair and my stubborn chin. We named her Lily. 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant again. Mark laughed and said, "We're building a whole team here." I laughed too, even though my body felt like it was running on fumes. Somewhere in those sleepless nights and endless diaper changes, the boutique dreams started to feel childish. The Pinterest board went unopened, the notebook of poems stayed in a drawer. I told myself I'd get back to it when things settled down, but things never settled. They just kept piling up. Laundry, bottles, doctor appointments, playdates, bills. One afternoon, when Lily was napping and the baby was kicking inside me, I pulled out my old sketchbooks. The pages smelled like pencil shavings and possibility. I flipped through them. Dresses I'd never sew, storefronts I'd never open, poems half-finished like abandoned conversations. I sat on the floor and cried quietly so I wouldn't wake the baby. Then I closed the books, tied them with an old hair scrunchie, and slid the stack under the bed, far back, where dust collects and things get forgotten. That was the first piece of me I buried. I didn't think of it as giving up. I thought of it as growing up, as choosing love, as being responsible. I told myself, wives don't have time for childish things. I was wrong, but I wouldn't know that for another 15 years. Lily arrived on a rainy Tuesday in March, right as the dogwoods were starting to bloom outside our apartment window. The labor was long, 22 hours of contractions that felt like someone was twisting my insides with a hot poker. Mark held my hand the whole time, whispering, "You've got this, babe," even when his face went pale from watching the monitor beep. When the nurse finally laid that tiny, squirming bundle on my chest, everything else disappeared. The pain, the exhaustion, the fear, it all melted away. She had his nose and my eyes, and when she wrapped her little fist around my finger, I felt something shift inside me. This was it. This was the reason. I stayed home with her. It wasn't even a real decision, it just happened. My boss at the diner understood. "Kids come first," she said, hugging me goodbye with a plate of leftover pie wrapped in foil. Mark's job at the auto parts warehouse paid enough for rent, diapers, and formula if we were careful. "We'll make it work," he told me, kissing my forehead while I nursed Lily in the rocking chair we'd bought secondhand from Craigslist. I nodded, still high on that new mom hormone fog, believing every word. The days blurred into a rhythm I hadn't expected. Wake up at dawn to her cries, change her, feed her, rock her back to sleep while the sun came up, then laundry, dishes, a quick shower if I was lucky. By afternoon, I'd be on the couch with her asleep on my chest, scrolling through Facebook and seeing my old high school friends posting about promotions, vacations, new apartments in the city. I'd smile at their pictures, type, "Looks amazing," under them, and close the app before the ache in my chest got too sharp. People kept saying the same things. At the grocery store, the checkout lady would coo over Lily and tell me, "You're so lucky to have such a supportive husband." At church, the older women in the nursery would pat my arm and say, "He's a good man, letting you stay home like this." I always smiled and thanked them. I never corrected the story they were telling themselves, that Mark had let me quit, that he was the generous one. The truth was quieter. He never asked what I wanted. He assumed this was what I wanted because it was what his mom had done, what his sister had done, what every woman he knew had done when babies came. I didn't fight it. How could I? Lily needed me. Her little lungs still made that soft wheezing sound when she slept, and every time she cried, my body responded before my brain did, milk letting down, heart racing. I told myself this was temporary. I'd go back to work when she was older, maybe when she started preschool. I'd dust off the boutique dream, reopen that Pinterest board, start saving again. There was time. Then came Ethan. I found out I was pregnant again when Lily was just 9 months old. We hadn't planned it, not really, but Mark grinned like he'd won the lottery. "A boy this time," he said, already picturing backyard catch and Little League. I smiled too, but inside something tightened. My body hadn't even fully recovered. The stretch marks were still angry red, my hips ached when I stood too long, and sleep was a myth. But I pushed it down. This was love, right? Building a family, giving everything. I didn't go back to work. How could I? Two under two, daycare costs would eat half my paycheck. Mark said, "We'll figure it out." And I believed him because I had to. I became the full-time everything. Cook, cleaner, nurse, storyteller, referee. I learned to fold tiny onesies one-handed while bouncing Lily on my hip. I memorized the exact rhythm of the washing machine so I could time naps around cycles. I stopped wearing makeup most days because who had time? My hair went into a permanent messy bun. I told myself it was a season. But seasons have endings, and this one kept stretching. Mark worked long hours, overtime when they offered it, because we need the money for the kids. He'd come home tired, kiss the top of my head, play with the babies for 20 minutes, then crash on the couch with a beer and the remote. I'd keep going. Bath time, bedtime stories, dishes, packing lunches for the next day, even though they were too small to eat them yet. He never asked how my day was. Not really. He'd say, "Everything good?" And I'd nod. "Yeah, we're good," because saying anything else felt like complaining, and I wasn't a complainer. I was grateful. Grateful for the roof over our heads, grateful he didn't drink too much, grateful he came home every night instead of disappearing like some husbands did, grateful for the life we were building. I repeated it like a mantra while I wiped applesauce off the floor or rocked Ethan through colic at 2 a.m. I stopped sketching. The pencils stayed in the drawer. The notebook of poems gathered dust next to the bed. I told myself I'd pick them up again soon, maybe when the kids were in school, maybe when things calmed down, but the days kept filling up with other people's needs. Lily's first steps, Ethan's first tooth, Mark's promotion that meant more hours but a little more money. My dreams felt smaller every month, like clothes I'd outgrown but couldn't bear to throw away. One evening, after the kids were finally asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold tea. Mark was watching a game in the living room, volume low. I stared at the wall and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just for me. Not a quick shower or a 5-minute scroll on my phone. Something real, something that was mine. I got up, walked to the bedroom, and pulled the sketchbooks out from under the bed. The scrunchie was still tied around them. I opened the top one. There was a drawing of a woman in a flowing dress I'd imagined selling in my boutique. Below it, a half-finished poem. "She folds herself smaller each day so the house won't collapse, but who holds her when the walls finally breathe?" I traced the words with my finger. My eyes stung. I closed the book, slid it back under the bed, and went to bed beside Mark. He was already snoring. That night, I dreamed of a storefront with fairy lights. I was inside, hanging dresses, laughing with customers. When I woke up, the dream lingered like smoke. I pushed it away. I didn't know it then, but that was the second piece of me I buried. The first had been quiet, almost gentle. This one hurt more because I felt it happening. I chose to let it go anyway, because love meant sacrifice, because family came first, because I was a mother now, and mothers don't get to dream big anymore. I was wrong about all of it, but it would take years and a lot more pain before I could admit that out loud. It didn't happen all at once. That's the cruel part about becoming invisible. You don't notice the light dimming until the room is already dark. I remember the exact moment I first swallowed a whole sentence. Ethan was 18 months old, Lily 3.5. Mark had come home late again, after 8, which was starting to feel normal. He walked in, dropped his keys on the counter, kicked off his boots without looking where they landed, and headed straight for the fridge. I'd kept dinner warm under foil, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans the way his mom used to make them. I'd spent the afternoon scrubbing the high chair tray 3 times because Ethan kept throwing peas like confetti. He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, cracked it, took a long pull, then finally looked at me. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to sound light. He shrugged. "Same old crap, boss writing me about inventory again, like I control the damn trucks." I nodded. That sucks. Want me to heat up your plate? He waved it off. I'll eat later. I'm beat. I stood there in the kitchen doorway, still wearing the apron I'd put on at 5 o'clock, hands red from dish soap. I wanted to tell him about my day, how Lily had drawn a picture of our family at preschool and left me out of it, just Daddy, her, and Ethan holding hands, how it stung more than it should have, how I'd spent the afternoon crying in the laundry room while the dryer tumbled, then wiped my face and went back to folding his work shirts like nothing happened. Instead, I said, "Okay, I'll wrap it up for you." He grunted something that might have been thanks and disappeared into the living room. The TV clicked on, some football recap. I turned back to the sink, rinsed the last plate, and felt the words I hadn't said settle in my throat like wet cement. They stayed there. That was the beginning. I got good at it fast. Swallowing became second nature. When he snapped at me because the remote wasn't where he left it, "Why can't anything stay put in this house?" I bit my tongue instead of saying, "Because I'm the only one who picks anything up." When he forgot our anniversary and I found the card I'd bought for him still in my purse, I smiled and said, "It's fine, we've got the kids to think about." When friends asked how I was doing, I answered with updates about Mark's new shift schedule or Lily's ballet recital. My own name stopped coming up. I stopped talking about the boutique, stopped mentioning the poems, stopped mentioning much of anything that wasn't about them. It felt easier that way, safer. If I didn't say what I wanted, no one could say no. If I didn't ask for anything, I couldn't be disappointed. The kids noticed in pieces. Lily started asking questions like, "Mommy, why don't you sing anymore?" I used to sing while I cooked, old country songs my dad loved, or silly made-up ones about bath time. One day, I caught myself humming in the kitchen and stopped mid-note, like someone had flipped a switch. I told her, "Mommy's just tired, baby." She accepted it. Kids accept a lot when you say it with a smile. Mark didn't notice at all, or if he did, he liked it this way. A quiet wife is a peaceful house. He'd come home, eat, watch TV, go to bed. Sometimes he'd reach for me in the dark, and I'd let him because it felt like connection, even if it was only skin deep. Afterward, he'd roll over and sleep. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing, wondering when I'd stopped being someone he talked to and started being someone he just lived with. Friends drifted, not dramatically, just slowly. Playdate moms stopped inviting me because "you always seem so busy." My old high school best friend, Sarah, moved to Charlotte for a job, and our texts went from daily to monthly to "happy birthday" once a year. When she asked how I was doing, I sent back photos of the kids. Never of me, never a real answer. I started avoiding mirrors. Not consciously at first. I'd brush my teeth with my head down, change clothes in the closet so I wouldn't catch my reflection. When I did look, usually by accident while passing the hallway mirror, I saw someone softer around the edges, eyes tired, mouth set in a permanent half-smile. The girl from the pier at Wrightsville Beach was gone. She'd been replaced by this woman who looked like she was always waiting for permission to speak. One afternoon, I took the kids to the park. Lily ran to the swings. Ethan toddled after her with his sippy cup. I sat on a bench watching other moms chat, laugh, complain about their husbands in that casual, conspiratorial way women do when they feel safe. One of them turned to me, someone I vaguely knew from preschool drop-off, and said, "So what do you do all day while the kids are at school?" I froze. For a second, I thought about saying the truth. I fold laundry, I cry in the bathroom, I wait for everyone to need me again. Instead, I laughed lightly and said, "Oh, mom stuff. Errands, cleaning, trying to keep my head above water." She nodded sympathetically. "You're amazing. I don't know how you do it." I smiled. "Thanks." Inside, something cracked. Not loud, just a quiet fracture. Because I wasn't amazing. I was disappearing, and no one, not my husband, not my friends, not even my kids, seemed to mind. That night, I lay in bed next to Mark. He was scrolling on his phone, the blue light lighting up his face. I turned to him. "Mark?" "Hmm?" do you ever think about me? Like, what I want? He didn't look up. What do you mean? I mean, do you ever ask what I want? Not for the kids, not for the house, just me. He sighed, set the phone down. Babe, I know I love you. I work hard so you don't have to. What more do you want? I opened my mouth. The words were right there. Real ones, angry ones, sad ones. But I swallowed them again. They tasted like rust this time. Nothing, I said. I'm good. He kissed my forehead. That's my girl. He rolled over. I stared at the ceiling until the streetlight outside flickered off. That was the day I stopped hearing my own voice. Not because it was gone, because I'd learned how to keep it quiet. I told myself it was for peace, for love, for family. I was lying to myself. But the lie was comfortable, and I'd gotten very good at being comfortable in small spaces. Every morning started the same way, like slipping into a costume I never got to take off. The alarm went off at 5:45 a.m., not because I wanted to be up that early, but because Lily had started waking at 6 sharp, and if I didn't get ahead of the day, it swallowed me whole. I'd slide out of bed without turning on the light, careful not to wake Mark. He slept like a log after his late shifts, snoring softly, one arm flung over the pillow I used to share more evenly. I'd pad to the bathroom in the dark, splash cold water on my face, and stare at the woman in the mirror for exactly 3 seconds before looking away. She looked tired, reliable, invisible. Then the uniform went on. First, the faded gray yoga pants I'd bought during my second pregnancy because they stretched over the parts of me that never quite bounced back. Then the long-sleeve t-shirt, usually one of Mark's old company ones, because they were soft and big enough to hide the softness around my middle. Over that, the apron I'd sewn myself from leftover fabric scraps, blue gingham with white pockets, the kind that screamed homemaker without saying a word. I tied it around my waist like armor. Breakfast came next. Cereal for the kids, Cheerios for Lily, the sugary kind for Ethan because it kept him quiet longer, coffee for Mark, black, 2 sugars, exactly 6:45 a.m., and whatever I could grab standing up. Half a banana, cold toast, sometimes just the steam from the coffee maker. I'd set the table, pour the milk, slice apples into perfect wedges because Lily liked them pretty. By 7:15, the kitchen smelled like toast and routine. Mark would shuffle in around 7:30, hair sticking up, eyes half open. Morning, he'd mumble, kiss the top of my head like it was a reflex, grab his coffee, and sit. He'd scroll his phone while the kids ate. I'd wipe faces, pack backpacks, tie shoes. Have a good day, I'd say as he headed out the door. He'd wave without turning around. The kids and I had our own little parade after that. Drop off at preschool for Lily, then back home with Ethan for quiet time that was never quiet. Laundry, dishes, vacuuming the same carpet squares I'd vacuumed yesterday. I moved through the house like a ghost doing chores, efficient, silent, unseen. The phone would buzz with texts from other moms. Can you pick up Lily today? Do you have extra snacks for the class party? Hey, can Ethan come over after nap? I always said yes, always. No one asked how I was. Not really. No one asked how I was sleeping. No one asked anything that might require me to admit I wasn't okay. The dark circles under my eyes got deeper. I tried concealer for a while, cheap drugstore stuff that caked into the lines around my eyes, but it felt like putting makeup on a ghost. Pointless, so I stopped. My laugh got shorter, more automatic. My voice got softer. I spoke in short sentences. Dinner's ready, homework time, I love you. The long stories I used to tell, the ones about my dreams, my sketches, the boutique I still pictured in my head, those stayed locked inside. I became the calendar, the reminder app, the emotional ATM everyone withdrew from without making a deposit. Mark would text from work, pick up milk, can you call the plumber, forgot my lunch, bring it. I'd do it every time. The kids would climb on me like I was furniture, pulling my hair, wiping peanut butter hands on my shirt, crying into my neck when they scraped a knee. I'd hold them, soothe them, clean them up. No one ever held me. One afternoon, I sat on the couch during Ethan's nap. The house was finally quiet. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, making stripes on the floor. I looked around at the toys scattered like landmines, the half-folded laundry pile, the sink full of dishes I'd wash later, and felt something heavy settle in my chest. Not sadness, exactly, emptiness, like I'd been giving and giving until there was nothing left to give, and no one noticed the tank was dry. I picked up my phone, scrolled through old photos. There I was, 22, laughing on the beach with Mark, hair wild in the wind, eyes bright. Then 25, pregnant with Lily, hand on my belly, smiling like the world was mine. Then 30, 32, 35. The smiles got smaller, the eyes got duller, the background stayed the same. Kitchen, living room, kids' bedroom. Me fading into it. I set the phone down, went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror again, this time longer than 3 seconds. I didn't recognize her. Not because she looked old, because she looked gone. I whispered to the reflection, so quiet I barely heard it myself. "Where did you go?" No answer. I washed my hands, dried them on the apron, and went back to folding laundry. The uniform was still on. It fit me perfectly now. Too perfectly. It had molded to me like a second skin. That afternoon, while the kids napped, I stood in the kitchen staring at the knife block. Not in a dark way, just staring, wondering how long it had been since I'd done something sharp, anything bold. I picked up the biggest knife, turned it over in my hand, then I set it down and started chopping carrots for dinner. Strong women keep going, I told myself. Strong women hold it together. Strong women don't complain. I believed it. I had to. Because if I admitted the truth, that I was disappearing piece by piece, that the uniform had become a cage, I didn't know who I'd be without it. So I kept wearing it, day after day. Smile on, voice low, dreams buried deeper. I was the glue, the calendar, the emotional ATM everyone withdrew from without making a deposit. The signs were there if I'd let myself look. But looking would have meant admitting something was wrong, and I'd spent so many years convincing myself everything was fine that ignoring became easier than facing. It started small. Mark's phone buzzed more at dinner, face down on the table, screen lighting up like a secret. He'd glance at it, smile faintly, then flip it over again. "Work stuff," he'd say if I asked. I stopped asking. Late nights turned into client meetings that stretched past 10, then 11. He came home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine, something sweet and floral, not the cheap body spray I wore on date nights that hadn't happened in years. I told myself it was the new air freshener in his truck. I told myself a lot of things. One Thursday in late fall, the kids were at my mom's for a sleepover. First time in months we had the house to ourselves. I'd planned a quiet evening, his favorite lasagna, candles on the table, maybe even a movie after the kids were gone. I spent the afternoon cooking, humming old songs, feeling almost like the girl from the pier again. When he walked in at 8:47, later than promised, I smiled big. "Hey, stranger," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Dinner's ready. I even made garlic bread." He didn't smile back. He looked tired, distracted. "Smells good," he muttered, kicking off his shoes. "I'm gonna shower first." He headed straight for the bathroom. I stood in the kitchen, listening to the water run, the lasagna cooling on the counter. 20 minutes later, he came out in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair damp. We sat down. I served him. He ate in silence, scrolling his phone between bites. "Everything okay?" I asked. He shrugged. "Long day." I nodded, pushed food around my plate. After dinner, he went to the couch, turned on the TV. I cleaned up alone. The clink of dishes, the scrape of the spatula, the quiet hum of the fridge. When I finished, I joined him on the couch. He didn't move over to make room. I sat anyway, close enough that our thighs touched. He kept watching the game. I tried. "Remember when we used to watch these together and bet on who'd win?" He grunted. "Yeah." Silence stretched. I reached for his hand. He let me hold it for a second, then pulled away to grab the remote. "Gonna get a beer." That's when I saw it, his phone on the coffee table, screen lighting up with a text. The preview flashed before he snatched it. "Can't stop thinking about last night. When can we do it again?" Kissy face. The name above it, Jessica. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on stairs. I stared at the screen until it went dark. He came back with his beer, sat down, phone in hand now, angled away from me. I didn't say anything right then. I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat like broken glass. Instead, I got up, said I was tired, went to bed. He came in an hour later, slid under the covers, kissed my shoulder like nothing had happened. I lay there pretending to sleep, tears soaking the pillow silently. The next morning, I waited until he left for work. Then I did what I swore I'd never do. I picked up his phone. He never changed the passcode, our wedding date. I opened the messages. They weren't even careful. Hundreds of texts, photos, late-night meetups at a bar downtown, then her apartment. "You make me feel alive again," he wrote her. "She's just there." Her replies were eager, full of emojis and promises. One photo showed her hand on his chest, his wedding ring glinting in the low light. I sat on the bathroom floor and read every single one. My hands shook so hard the phone blurred. When I finished, I threw up in the toilet. Then I cleaned it up, brushed my teeth, and went about the day like normal. Picked up the kids, made dinner, smiled when they asked about Daddy. He came home that night acting the same, kissed my cheek. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said. My voice sounded flat, like someone else's. That weekend, he went golfing with buddies. I knew better now. When he got back, smelling like her perfume and looking guilty pleased, I confronted him in the kitchen while the kids napped. I saw the messages. He froze, beer halfway to his mouth. Then he set it down slowly. "What messages?" "Don't. Just don't." Silence. Long, heavy silence. He sighed, rubbed his face. "Look, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." He looked at me, really looked for the first time in years. "You changed, babe. You're not the woman I married. You're always tired, always nagging about the house, the kids. Jessica, she listens. She makes me feel like a man again." I laughed. It came out sharp, broken. "I changed? I changed because I became the woman you needed me to be. I quit my job, I stayed home, I cooked, cleaned, raised our kids while you worked and came home to a peaceful house. I disappeared so you could have everything, and now I'm the problem?" He shrugged. "I didn't ask you to do all that." The words hit like a slap. "I didn't have to. You just took it. Every day, you took it." He looked away. "I'm sorry, but it happened. I don't want to lose the family." I stared at him. "You already lost me." He didn't argue. He just sat there looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I made breakfast like always. The kids didn't notice anything different. Mark ate quietly, then left for work. I stood at the sink, washing dishes, staring out the window at the backyard where the kids used to play in the kiddie pool. I didn't cry, not then. Instead, something cold and clear settled in my chest. He thought I'd changed. He was right, but not the way he meant. I'd changed from a woman with dreams into a shadow that kept his life comfortable, and he'd thanked me by finding someone who still had light in her eyes. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the years I'd given, the pieces I'd buried, the voice I silenced, all so he could feel like a man while I faded into the wallpaper. I didn't know what came next. Divorce, counseling, pretending. But one thing was certain. The invisible uniform had a tear in it now. And through that tear, a tiny sliver of the old me was starting to peek out. I wasn't ready to step into the light yet, but I wasn't going to sew the tear shut. Not this time. It was 3:17 a.m. when the dam finally cracked. The house was quiet, too quiet. Mark's snoring drifted from the bedroom like distant thunder. The kids were asleep in their rooms, Lily curled around her stuffed giraffe, Ethan sprawled with one foot hanging off the bed. I'd checked on them twice already, the way I always did when sleep wouldn't come. But tonight, the checking felt different, desperate. Like I was looking for proof that I still belonged somewhere in this house. I couldn't stay in bed. Every time I closed my eyes, the same loop played. His voice saying, "You're not the woman I married," Jessica's texts flashing on his phone, the way he'd looked at me, not angry, not sorry, just done. Like I was a problem he'd already solved by finding someone else. I slipped out of the guest room where I'd been sleeping since the confrontation. Bare feet on cold hardwood, I padded down the hallway, past the family photos on the wall, our wedding, Lily's first birthday, Ethan's hospital picture with the tiny knit cap. In every shot, I was smiling. In every shot, I looked smaller. I ended up in the living room, sat on the floor in front of the coffee table, pulled out the old photo box from the bottom shelf, the one I'd shoved there years ago because looking at it hurt too much. Dust puffed up when I opened the lid. I sneezed quietly, then started digging. There she was, the girl from Wrightsville Beach. Sun-kissed skin, wind-whipped hair, eyes wide and bright like she believed the world was waiting for her. In one photo, she was laughing so hard, her head was thrown back, Mark's arm around her waist, both of them soaked from jumping waves. In another, she was alone, standing on the pier at sunset, arms out like she could hug the whole ocean. That girl had plans. That girl had poems in her notebook and sketches in her bag. That girl thought love would make her bigger, not smaller. I flipped through more. Pregnancy photos, me glowing, hand on my belly, then baby pictures, me exhausted but beaming, holding Lily like she was the sun, then Ethan, then family shots where I was always in the back, holding someone, feeding someone, wiping someone. My smile got thinner with each year. My eyes got duller. By the last photo, a Christmas card from 2 years ago, I was barely there at all, just a face in the frame, smiling for the camera while everyone else looked forward. I set the photos down. My hands were shaking. I pressed them to my mouth to keep the sound in, but the sob came anyway, low, raw, like something being torn out of me. I cried for her, for the girl who'd said yes on that pier and kept saying yes until she had no more yeses left. I cried for every time I'd swallowed my words, every time I'd chosen peace over truth, every time I'd told myself sacrifice was love. I cried until my throat burned and my eyes swelled shut. Then I cried some more. Because it wasn't just about Mark, it was about me. I'd spent 15 years folding myself smaller so the house wouldn't collapse. I'd let him take pieces without asking. I'd let the kids take pieces without noticing. I'd even taken pieces from myself, convinced it was noble. I'd buried my dreams under the bed like dirty secrets. I'd silenced my voice until it forgot how to speak. And for what? For a man who looked at another woman and felt alive again. For children who loved me but didn't know the real me. For a life that looked perfect from the outside and felt hollow from the inside. I rocked back and forth on the floor, hugging my knees. The sobs turned to hiccups, then to quiet gasps. I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake next to him, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt so alone in my own marriage. I thought about the mornings I'd smiled through exhaustion, the afternoons I'd cried in the laundry room, the evenings I'd cooked dinner with shaking hands. I thought about how many times I said, "I'm fine," when I was dying inside. That night, on the living room floor, at 3:17 a.m., I finally understood. Sacrifice without boundaries isn't love. It's a slow suicide. I'd been killing myself quietly for years, starving the parts of me that dreamed, that laughed loud, that wanted more. I'd given everything until there was nothing left, and then I'd given more. I'd become the invisible uniform, always there, always ready, always silent. And when Mark cheated, it wasn't the worst betrayal. The worst betrayal was me letting it happen, me teaching everyone, including myself, that my worth was in how much I could disappear. I sat there until the first gray light crept through the blinds. My face was swollen, my shirt soaked with tears and snot. I didn't care. For the first time in forever, I didn't try to clean myself up or smile or pretend. I just existed, raw, broken, but real. I looked at the photo box one last time, picked up the picture of me on the pier, arms wide, eyes full of light. I held it to my chest like a promise. "I'm sorry to her," I whispered. "I'm so sorry I let you go." Then I closed the box, not to bury it again, just to rest it for a while. I stood up. My legs shook. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank it slowly. The house was still quiet. Mark was still snoring. The kids were still sleeping. The world hadn't ended because I'd finally let myself break. But something inside me had shifted. The tear in the invisible uniform was wider now. Light was getting in. I didn't know what came next. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know if I could fix what was broken. But for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't afraid to try. Because the girl on the pier, she wasn't gone. She was just waiting. And that night, at 3:17 a.m., on the living room floor, I finally decided to let her breathe again. The deepest cuts don't always come from the person who betrayed you. Sometimes they come from the ones you love most, innocently, without even knowing they're holding the knife. It happened on a quiet Saturday morning in early spring, the kind of morning where the sun slants through the kitchen window and makes everything look softer, like the world is trying to apologize. I was at the stove, flipping pancakes, blueberry for Lily, plain for Ethan because he still hated the blue stuff. Mark had left early for errands, which I now knew meant Jessica. The house felt lighter without him, even if the air still carried the weight of what he'd done. Lily came in first, hair wild from sleep, wearing her favorite unicorn pajamas that were getting too small. She climbed onto a stool at the counter, chin in her hands, watching me work. "Mommy," she said, voice small and curious, "why don't you draw anymore?" I froze. The spatula hovered mid-flip, pancake almost burnt. "What do you mean, baby?" I asked, forcing a smile. I turned the pancake, busied my hands. "You used to draw all the time, remember? You made me that picture of the princess castle with the dragon that had sparkly wings. You said you'd teach me how to draw people with real faces, not stick ones, but you never did." She wasn't accusing, she was just remembering. That made it worse. I swallowed hard. "Mommy's been busy, sweetheart, with you and Ethan and school and everything." She tilted her head. "But you're not busy right now." The words landed like stones in my stomach. She was right. Right then, with the house quiet and the kids safe, I had a moment. I could have pulled out paper, pencils, sat with her and sketched. But the sketchbooks were still under the bed, tied with that scrunchie. I hadn't touched them since the night I broke. I plated the pancakes instead. "Here you go. Eat up before they get cold." She took the plate but didn't move. "You used to be fun, Mommy." I turned away to pour more batter, hiding my face. Fun. That word hit harder than any of Mark's excuses. I used to sing in the car, make silly voices for bedtime stories, dance in the living room when a good song came on. Now I just existed. I drove them to school, picked them up, helped with homework, packed lunches. Functional, reliable, invisible. Ethan toddled in next, rubbing his eyes. He climbed into his booster seat and immediately started banging his fork. "Pancakes, pancakes." I served him, kissed the top of his head. He grinned up at me, syrup already on his chin. "You're the best cooker, Mommy." I smiled. "Thanks, buddy." But Lily wasn't done. She poked at her food. "Dad says you're always tired. Is that why you don't draw or sing or play tag with us anymore?" I set the spatula down. My hands were shaking. "Dad said that?" She nodded. "When you were in the bathroom crying that one time, he told us you were just really tired from taking care of us." I felt the floor tilt. Mark had turned my tears into an excuse. He'd made my pain sound like a chore, like I was the problem because I couldn't keep up. I sat down at the table with them, looked at my daughter, 7 years old, already noticing too much. Looked at my son, 4, still innocent enough to think syrup on pancakes was the biggest problem in the world. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't realize I'd stopped doing those things." Lily reached over and patted my hand like a little adult. "It's okay, Mommy, but can we draw today, after breakfast?" I looked at her bright eyes, so much like mine used to be, and I nodded. "Yes, we can draw today." We finished eating, I cleared the plates, then I went to the bedroom, knelt down, and pulled the sketchbooks out from under the bed. Dust clung to them like old grief. I brushed it off, untied the scrunchie, opened the top one. Lily and Ethan sat on the living room floor with me. I handed them paper and crayons. I took a pencil. My hand felt strange holding it, like a muscle that hadn't been used in years. I started sketching, a simple princess castle, just like Lily remembered. Dragon with sparkly wings. Lily gasped. "That's it! You remembered!" Ethan scribbled next to me. Big circles, happy colors. "This is a monster truck," he announced proudly. I laughed, real laugh, not the short one I'd been using. It felt rusty, but good. We drew for an hour. No phones, no chores, no distractions. Just us. When Mark came home later, he found us surrounded by paper, crayons scattered, me with charcoal on my cheek from smudging a line. He paused in the doorway, looking surprised. "What's this?" he asked. Lily jumped up. "Mommy's drawing again. Look, Daddy." He glanced at the papers, then at me. "Nice," he said. Flat, like he was commenting on the weather. I met his eyes. "Yeah, it is." He didn't stay long, went to watch TV, the kids kept drawing, I kept drawing with them. But inside, something was shifting. Their words had cut deeper than Mark's affair ever could have, not because they meant to hurt me, because they hadn't noticed I was gone. They'd grown up watching a mother who gave everything and kept nothing. They'd learned from me that a woman's worth is measured by how much she disappears, that love means erasing yourself, that strong means silent. I taught them that, and that was the most painful betrayal of all, because they were supposed to be the reason I kept going. Instead, they'd become mirrors, showing me exactly what I'd become. That afternoon, while they napped, I sat on the couch with one of my old sketchbooks open on my lap. I didn't draw, I just looked at the pages, dresses I'd never sewn, poems I'd never finished, dreams I'd buried. I whispered to the empty room, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I showed you to disappear." Then I closed the book, not to hide it, to rest it until I was ready to pick it up again, for real this time, because my children deserved a mother who was fully there, not a shadow, not a uniform, a real woman, with a voice, with dreams, with light in her eyes. And starting today, I was going to give that to them, even if it meant starting small, even if it scared me, even if Mark didn't like it. Because the lesson I learned that Saturday morning wasn't just about me, it was about them, and I refused to teach them any longer that a mother's love means losing herself. The first no came out so small, I almost didn't hear it myself. It was a Tuesday evening in late May, the kind of sticky North Carolina heat that makes your shirt cling before you even step outside. The kids were finally down. Lily, after 3 stories and a promise to draw more tomorrow. Ethan, after rocking him for 20 minutes while he fought sleep like it was the enemy. Mark walked in at 7:42, later than usual, carrying that faint floral scent again. He dropped his keys, loosened his tie, and headed straight for the fridge. "Dinner is in the oven," I said from the kitchen doorway. "Lasagna, still warm." He nodded without looking up. "Cool, I'm starving." I watched him pull out a beer instead of a plate. Something inside me tightened. Not anger exactly, more like a rubber band stretched too long, finally starting to fray. He sat at the table, scrolling his phone. I stood there for a second, then spoke. "I'm not heating it up tonight." He glanced up, eyebrows raised. "What?" I said, "I'm not heating it up. You can get it yourself if you want it." His face shifted. Surprise first, then irritation. "Babe, come on. I had a long day. Just pop it in the microwave for a minute." I crossed my arms. My heart hammered so hard I thought he'd hear it. "No." He set the beer down harder than necessary. The bottle clinked against the wood. "What's your problem?" "I'm tired," I said. The words felt foreign on my tongue. Simple, honest, mine. "I've been tired for years. Tonight, I'm not doing it." He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "Since when do you not do dinner?" "Since now." The silence stretched, thick, uncomfortable. He looked at me, really looked, like he was seeing a stranger in his kitchen. Then he laughed, short and sharp. You're serious? Yes. He pushed back from the table. Fine, I'll eat out. He grabbed his keys again, headed for the door. Don't wait up. The door shut, not a slam, Mark wasn't the slamming type, but hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. I stood there in the quiet kitchen, hands still crossed over my chest. My legs felt shaky, like I'd run a mile, but I didn't cry, I didn't chase after him, I just breathed. That small no echoed in my head like thunder in a canyon. The next morning, he came back, quiet, hungover looking, smelling faintly of bar smoke and regret. He didn't apologize, he just poured coffee and said, "You okay?" I met his eyes. "No, I'm not." He paused, mug halfway to his mouth. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm tired of being the one who always says yes, tired of cooking, cleaning, waiting, smiling when I don't feel like it, tired of disappearing so everyone else can stay comfortable." He set the mug down. "I never asked you to do all that. You didn't have to. You just expected it, and I gave it, every day, until there was nothing left for me." He rubbed his face. "So what now? You want me to start cooking?" "I want you to see me, really see me, not just the wife who keeps the house running, the woman who used to have dreams, who still does." He didn't answer right away, just stared at the floor. Then he shrugged. "Okay, whatever you need." It wasn't an apology, it wasn't a promise, but it was a crack in the wall. I started small after that. I bought new clothes, not for him, not for the kids, for me. A soft green blouse from the clearance rack at Kohl's that actually fit my shoulders right, jeans that didn't pinch, a pair of earrings, simple silver hoops I'd wanted for years but never bought because we didn't need them. When Lily saw them, she grinned. "You look pretty, Mommy." I smiled, real smile. "Thanks, baby." I signed up for a painting class at the community center, Tuesday nights, 7 to 9. Mark raised an eyebrow when I told him, "You're going out?" "Yes, every Tuesday. You'll handle bedtime." He opened his mouth, closed it, nodded. "Okay." The first class felt like walking into a foreign country. The room smelled like acrylics and coffee. Women and a couple of men my age and older sat at easels, chatting easily. The instructor, a woman named Carla with wild gray curls and paint-splattered overalls, smiled at me. "First time?" I nodded. "Yeah, I used to draw a lot. Stopped for reasons." She didn't pry, just handed me a canvas and said, "Start wherever you want." I picked up a brush. My hand shook at first, then muscle memory kicked in. I painted a sunset. Nothing fancy, just oranges and pinks bleeding into purple, like the sky over Wrightsville Beach. When I stepped back, my eyes stung, not from the paint fumes, from recognition. I spoke up in class that night, asked a question about blending colors. Carla answered patiently. Another woman, mid-40s, wedding ring, tired eyes like mine, leaned over and whispered, "You've got talent. Don't stop." I didn't. I started saying no more often. No to extra playdates when I was exhausted. No to baking for every school event. No to staying up late folding laundry while Mark watched TV. Each no felt like stealing a piece of myself back. Scary at first, my stomach knotted every time, but then exhilarating, like breathing after being underwater too long. Mark didn't like it. He grumbled about changes, about how dinner wasn't always ready, about how the house wasn't as spotless. He spent more evenings out. I didn't chase him. The kids noticed too. Lily asked why Daddy seemed mad sometimes. I told her the truth, simple version. Mommy's learning to take care of herself too, like how we take care of you. Ethan just hugged me tighter. "I like when you paint, Mommy." One Tuesday after class, I came home with paint on my jeans and a small canvas under my arm. A seascape, rough but alive. Mark was on the couch, kids asleep. He looked up. "Looks good," he said, quiet. "Thanks," I replied. I hung it in the hallway, right next to the family photos. First piece of new art in the house in years. That night, I lay in bed, alone, since Mark had taken the couch again, and stared at the ceiling. The rubber band inside me wasn't stretched anymore. It was loosening. Not broken yet, but freer. I'd said no. I'd bought something for myself. I'd painted. I'd spoken. Small acts, but they were mine. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel guilty about it, because the truth was settling in. Taking care of me wasn't selfish. It was survival, and I was finally starting to live again. The suitcase was small, just a carry-on I'd bought years ago for a family trip to Myrtle Beach that never happened. I stood in the bedroom staring at it open on the bed, feeling like I was about to commit a crime. It was a Thursday in June, the kind of humid afternoon where the air sticks to your skin and cicadas scream from the trees outside. Mark was at work. The kids were at school and daycare until 4 p.m. I had 3 hours. I didn't plan to leave forever, not yet. I just needed air, real air, the kind that didn't smell like laundry detergent, spilled juice, and Mark's cologne mixed with someone else's perfume. I packed light, 2 changes of clothes, my favorite green blouse, the jeans that fit right, underwear, toothbrush, the sketchbook I'd started using again, a charger, and the photo of me on the pier at Wrightsville Beach. I tucked it between the pages like a talisman. No makeup, no extras, just enough to remind myself I existed outside these walls. I wrote a note on the kitchen counter. Simple, no drama. Taking a couple days to breathe. Kids are at school/daycare as usual. I'll be back Sunday. We need to talk when I return. Love, me. I almost crossed out love. It felt like a lie, but I left it. Habits die hard. I drove to Sarah's place in Charlotte, my old high school friend who'd moved there for a marketing job. She'd texted me a few weeks earlier after I finally answered one of her "How are you really?" messages with the truth. She didn't judge. She just said, "Come whenever. Couch is yours." The 3-hour drive felt endless and too short at the same time. I turned off the radio halfway and let the silence fill the car. No kids asking, "Are we there yet?" No Mark's voice in my head saying, "You okay?" like it was a checkbox. Just me, the highway, and the hum of tires on asphalt. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't scare me. It felt like permission. Sarah met me at the door with a hug that lasted longer than usual. She didn't ask questions right away, just took my suitcase, led me to the living room couch piled with blankets, and handed me a glass of iced tea. "You look different," she said, sitting across from me. "Different how?" "Like you're waking up." I laughed, short, shaky, or falling apart. She shook her head. "Same thing sometimes." We talked until midnight. I told her everything, the affair, the silence, the way I disappeared, the kids' words that cut deepest, the painting class, the first no. She listened without interrupting. When she finished, she said, "You didn't lose yourself. You just loaned her out. Time to take her back." I slept on her couch that night. Deep, dreamless sleep. No waking up to cries, no checking if Mark was home, no mental list running through my head. Just rest. Real rest. Friday morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through Sarah's big windows. She'd left for work with a note. "Coffee's on. Make yourself at home. There's a park 2 blocks down if you want to walk. Love you." I drank the coffee slowly. Black, no sugar, something I hadn't since before the kids. Then I walked to the park, sat on a bench under an oak tree, watched people jog, dogs chase balls, moms push strollers. No one knew me. No one expected anything from me. I pulled out the sketchbook and drew. The tree, the path, a woman sitting alone on a bench. Me. No one called. No frantic texts from Mark asking where I was, if the kids had eaten, why the laundry wasn't done. Just silence. Beautiful, terrifying silence. Saturday, I wandered downtown Charlotte, window shopped, ate a salad at a little cafe, bought a cheap paperback from a used bookstore. I sat in a park reading for hours. The book was about a woman who reinvents herself after divorce. I underlined lines that hurt to read because they were true. That night, Sarah and I ordered pizza, drank wine, laughed about old high school stories. For the first time in years, I laughed loud, head back, no holding back. It felt strange, like using a muscle I'd forgotten. Sunday morning, I packed the suitcase again. Sarah hugged me tight at the door. "You sure you're ready to go back?" "No," I said honestly, "but I have to, for the kids and for me, to see what happens next." The drive home felt different. The highway looked the same, but I didn't. When I pulled into the driveway at 2 p.m., Mark's truck was there. The kids' bikes were on the porch. I sat in the car for a minute, breathing. I walked in. The house smelled like burnt toast and tension. Mark was in the kitchen, staring at my note like it was evidence in a crime scene. The kids were in the living room, watching cartoons. Lily looked up first. "Mommy!" She ran and hugged my legs. Ethan toddled after her, arms up. I knelt, held them both, kissed their heads. "I missed you guys." Mark stood in the doorway. "You're back." "Yeah." He looked tired, bags under his eyes, shirt wrinkled. "We need to talk." "We do." The kids went back to cartoons. We sat at the kitchen table. Silence again, but different this time. Not heavy with secrets, heavy with possibility. He finally said, "I didn't know what to do. The house felt empty. The kids kept asking where you were. I told them you were visiting a friend. They cried the first night." My chest tightened. "I'm sorry I scared them." He rubbed his face. "I'm the one who should be sorry. I messed up, big time." I didn't speak, just waited. "He thought I'd always be here," he said quietly, "like the furniture, always there when I needed it. I didn't see how much you were carrying or how much I wasn't." I nodded slowly. "I carried it because I chose to, but I can't anymore, not like before." He looked at me, really looked. "So what now?" "I don't know," I said, "but I'm not going back to being invisible. I need space to breathe. I need to paint. I need to say no sometimes. I need to be a person again, not just a wife and mom." He swallowed. "Can we try? Counseling or something?" "Maybe," I said, "but it starts with me, not with fixing us, with fixing me." He nodded. "Okay." I stood up, went to the bedroom, unpacked the suitcase slowly, hung the green blouse in the closet, placed the sketchbook on the nightstand, not under the bed, visible. That night, I slept in our bed again. Mark didn't reach for me. I didn't reach for him. We just lay there, two people in the same space, finally hearing the silence between us. The house wasn't empty anymore, but it felt different, lighter, because for the first time, I existed in it, and I wasn't going to disappear again. I walked back into that house on Sunday afternoon like a stranger stepping into a familiar dream. The front door creaked the same way it always had. The smell of laundry detergent and leftover coffee hit me first. But something was different. Not the house, the air inside me. Lily and Ethan ran to the door before I could even set my keys down. Lily wrapped her arms around my waist so tight I almost lost my balance. Ethan climbed my leg like a monkey, babbling, "Mommy home, mommy home." I dropped to my knees right there in the entryway, hugged them both, buried my face in their hair. They smelled like shampoo and playground dirt. Home. Real home. Not the version I'd been living in, but the one I still loved with every bruised piece of me. Mark stood in the hallway, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept since I left. His eyes were red-rimmed, shirt rumpled. He didn't move to hug me, just watched. "Welcome back," he said quietly. I stood up slowly, keeping the kids close. "Thanks." We didn't talk much that first evening. I made dinner, simple grilled cheese and tomato soup, nothing fancy. The kids chattered about school, about how Daddy burned the toast that morning, about how they missed my bedtime stories. Mark ate in silence, glancing at me every few minutes like he was waiting for me to explode or disappear again. After the kids were in bed, we sat at the kitchen table. No TV, no phones, just the hum of the fridge and the weight of everything unsaid. "I'm not leaving," I told him first. "Not yet, but I'm not staying the same either." He nodded. I figured. I need counseling, individual first, then maybe couples if we both want to try. Okay. I'm going to keep painting. Tuesday nights stay mine, and I'm going to start saying what I need, out loud, no more swallowing it. He rubbed his jaw. I don't know how to do this. I messed up bad. I know that. You did, I said. No anger in my voice, just fact. But I messed up too. I let myself vanish so you wouldn't have to see me, so the kids wouldn't have to see me struggle. I taught everyone it was okay to take from me until there was nothing left. He looked down at his hands. I didn't see it. I swear I didn't. I know, but you have to see it now. We didn't hug that night. We didn't kiss. We just sat until the clock said midnight, then went to bed, same bed, separate sides. I slept with my back to him, but I didn't cry. I breathed, deep, steady breaths. For the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like a void. It felt like space, room to think, to feel, to decide. The weeks that followed were messy, beautifully, painfully messy. I started therapy, a quiet woman named Dr. Ellis in a small office downtown. She didn't push, she just listened while I unraveled 15 years of silence. I cried a lot those first sessions. I got angry, I laughed at how ridiculous it all sounded when I said it out loud. She helped me name things: codependency, people-pleasing, self-erasure disguised as love. She gave me tools, journal prompts, boundary scripts, permission to feel without fixing everyone else first. I pulled the rest of my old sketchbooks out from under the bed, not to hide them again, to use them. I set up a small corner in the spare room, easel, paints, good light from the window. I painted when the kids were at school, when Mark was at work. Sunsets, oceans, women standing tall on cliffs, self-portraits too, raw ones with tired eyes and determined mouths. I hung them in the hallway, right next to the family photos, no apologies. Mark went to his own therapy after a month, reluctantly at first, but he went. He started coming home earlier. He asked questions, real ones. How was your day? Not the automatic kind, the kind that waited for an answer. He burned dinner twice trying to help. We laughed about it. Laughed. Real laughter, not the polite kind. The kids adjusted in their own way. Lily started drawing with me every Saturday. We'd sit on the floor with paper everywhere, talking about colors and feelings. Ethan asked why I was happy louder now. I told him because Mommy's remembering how to be herself. He hugged me and said, I like loud, happy Mommy. Some days were hard. Mark and I fought, real fights, not the silent resentment kind. I said things I'd swallowed for years. He said things he'd never admitted. We both cried, we both apologized, we both kept going. One evening, about 6 months in, I came home from painting class with a new canvas. Me on the pier at Wrightsville Beach, arms wide, but older now, stretch marks, tired lines around the eyes, but still reaching. I hung it in the living room, center wall. Mark stared at it for a long time. That's you, he said. Yeah, I answered. The woman I was and the woman I'm becoming. He stepped closer. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to choose. I looked at him. I chose too, but I'm choosing different now. He nodded. I want to choose different too, if you'll let me. I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say no. I just said, we'll see. Some nights I still cry, not from pain, from relief, from the ache of remembering who I used to be and the joy of finding pieces of her again. Some days Mark and I feel like strangers trying to relearn each other. Some days we feel like old friends who finally see each other clearly. The kids notice the change. Lily says I laugh more. Ethan says I dance in the kitchen again. They see a mother who is tired sometimes, yes, but also alive. A mother who says no when she needs to, who says yes when she wants to, who paints, who dreams out loud. I am a mother again. A wife, maybe, someday, if we rebuild carefully. But most importantly, I am a woman. Not invisible, not perfect, not silent. I come first now, not because I don't love them, but because I finally love me enough to show up whole. The lesson came too late to save the girl on the pier, but not too late to save the woman she became. And every day I remind myself, holding everyone else together doesn't mean letting yourself fall apart. It means learning to hold yourself too. I was a mother, a wife, and a woman until I became invisible. Now I am all three again, but this time I come first, and no one, not even me, will ever ask me to disappear again.